Since 1978, Superman movies have continued to surface on the big screen. So where are we now? In today's video, I'll be starting a series where I'll talk about the history of superheroes in movies, talking about their previous film installments, where they are now, and what Hollywood has in store for these characters in the coming future. I'll be making an episode about any character who's gotten at least one solo movie, and I'll be releasing episodes in order of the character's theatrical debut. With that being said, let's get started. For years, Jewish writers Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster dreamed of wealth and royalty. Their dream finally came true in 1938 when Superman, a character who debuted in Action Comics #1, was a huge success. The popularity of the character launched the comic book superhero genre. In response, DC published Detective Comics #27, which introduced a just as popular character, Batman. For years, the two characters combined in one comic, teaming up on several occasions. DC went on to create other popular heroes such as Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash, and many others. DC would often compete with their chief rivals at Marvel. Superman lasted for decades with many live-action movie serials and black and white TV shows going on the air, but a legitimate feature film had yet to be made. Marvel and DC didn't have enough money to produce movies on their own and had to approach big studios for help. Marvel could only produce TV movies and TV shows at the time. However, The Incredible Hulk was the only franchise Marvel found success in. However, this all changed when Warner Brothers finally bought off DC. When this happened, a DC lineup was finally possible. The first planned film was for the first superhero, Superman. Richard Donner, the writer of The Godfather, was hired to direct this installment, and Christopher Reeve was cast as the titular hero. The movie centered around Superman's origin, how he came to Earth, what happened when he discovered his powers, and how he met Lois Lane, played by Margot Kidder. In the film, Superman would have to fight the villainous Lex Luthor, played by Gene Hackman. During pre-production, it was decided that Superman and Superman 2 would film side by side. However, when filming Superman 2, Richard Donner was fired and replaced with Richard Lester as director. In 1978, Warner Brothers finally released Superman under the tagline, "You will believe a man can fly." Superman the movie was a huge success both critically and financially. 2 years later, Superman 2, a film which featured Zod as the main antagonist, hit theaters, and despite production issues, it too was successful both critically and financially. At this point, Superman was now a blockbuster franchise, and a third installment was inevitable. Richard Lester returned as director, and husband and wife duo Leslie and David Newman returned as screenwriters. The Newmans hoped to integrate Brainiac and Supergirl into Superman 3. A script was written in which Brainiac adopts and raises Supergirl. Throughout the film, Brainiac would eventually fall in love with his adopted daughter. For obvious reasons, this screenplay was rejected. It was eventually decided that Superman 3 would be more of a comedy. Richard Pryor played the lead role in the film. This was a decision that co-stars Margot Robbie and Gene Hackman did not agree with. Because of this, Kidder only made a few cameo appearances in the film and was replaced by Clark Kent's childhood friend Lana Lang. Hackman refused to star in the film at all and was replaced by an original character named Ross Webster. Superman 3 received overwhelmingly negative reviews, and many critics complained that the movie's comedic tone was a step in the wrong direction. The film underperformed at the box office as well. While Superman 2 made a promising $190 million, Superman 3 only grossed roughly $80 million. However, critics praised the film's special effects, and while the film did underperform, it made quite a bit of money for a budget of only $39 million. Superman 4 would have to wait. But until then, a new spin-off was in the works. Warner at this point was still interested in using Supergirl. The studio decided to make a spin-off movie dedicated to the character that would be canon to the first 3 Superman films. It was decided that Helen Slater would portray the role of Supergirl. WB thought about reintroducing Christopher Reeve's Superman as a guest star. These plans immediately fell through the cracks. However, he did appear in a poster confirming the 2 franchises are connected, and Mark McClure did reprise his role as Jimmy Olsen. Supergirl bombed at the box office, only making $14 million, meaning Warner Brothers had lost $20 million thanks to the movie's huge underperformance. The film received almost universally negative reviews and currently holds a 7% on Rotten Tomatoes, making it the lowest rated superhero movie on the site. Warner Brothers thought this could be the end for Superman, but one studio still had hope in the franchise. In the mid-1980s, Cannon bought the film rights to Superman and started working on a 4th installment titled Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. A new villain named Nuclear Man was introduced, and Gene Hackman returned as Lex Luthor. Cannon hoped that if the film was successful, it might help fund Superman 5 and a planned Spider-Man movie. Some deleted scenes from the film were even considered for a 5th installment. However, Cannon wasn't made of money. Because of this, the budget was significantly decreased. The final product was nothing to brag about. This led to a series of awkward interviews. When the film came out, reviews were atrocious. Critics lambasted the movie for its poor special effects and laughable villain. Plans for Superman 5 were axed, and Cannon soon lost the rights to Spider-Man. Not only was Superman 4: The Quest for Peace considered a franchise killer, but also a poison which created a toxic environment for the superhero movie genre. Hollywood seemed to lose interest in superhero movies. That is, until Tim Burton's Batman was a huge success. At this point, comic books were failing, and DC's rival, Marvel Comics, had recently declared bankruptcy. DC had no choice but to perform publicity stunts to stay afloat. In the 1990s, DC killed off the iconic superhero that started it all. This sparked headlines across the globe. The success of the Death of Superman storyline, as well as the success of the Batman movies, got WB to consider another Superman film. After buying back the movie rights from Cannon, a new film was in the works and was set to be based off the Death of Superman storyline. A script for a new film titled Superman Reborn was written. In the script, Clark Kent is a shy wallflower who doesn't have the courage to ask Lois out. After Superman is killed by Doomsday, Clark reveals who he is to Lois just before he dies. Lois quickly learns she is pregnant, despite being a virgin. Her baby is born within under a week, and grows into an adult within only hours. When Lois is killed, her son must take down Zod and become the new Superman. The screenplay was rewritten from scratch once WB hired Kevin Smith to write a new script. However, Smith argued with producers as to how accurately the movie should follow the comics. Smith had been campaigning to get Tim Burton as director. Eventually, Smith got his wish, but after Burton entered the project, Smith was immediately fired. Burton planned a new movie which featured Brainiac, Lex Luthor, and Doomsday. The plot would have been about Superman and Lois' relationship, Lex and Brainiac combining to become a giant robot spider called Lexiac, and of course, Superman's death. Batman was supposed to have a cameo in the movie. with rumors that Michael Keaton might return as the Caped Crusader himself. Chris Rock was cast as Jimmy Olsen, and Nick Cage was set to play the Man of Tomorrow. Test footage of Superman flying had been shot, and pictures surfaced showing Cage donning the red and blue suit. Production was only a few weeks away from beginning, and Nick Cage had already been paid for the film when WB pulled the plug. The reason being because of the catastrophic box office bomb that was Batman and Robin. After the film was axed, Warner Brothers' plans for a sequel, sorry about that, the studio decided it wasn't worth throwing a huge chunk of money into another Superman flick. So the film was cancelled, but many sets were reused in the Wild Wild West movie, which also bombed at the box office. Plans for Superman's theatrical redemption were still on hold at the moment. In the early 2000s, however, WB released a new live-action series known as Smallville, which was a prequel to the Superman origin. The series was a huge hit that lasted for 10 seasons. That did not go unnoticed by WB, who decided to try yet again to resurrect Superman on the big screen. McG was hired to direct a new film called Superman Flyby, with the now legendary J.J. Abrams on board to write the script. In the script, Krypton is never blown up. Instead, we learn that Jor-El, Superman's father, actually has an evil brother with a lust for anarchy. He takes over the planet and imprisons Jor-El, but not before he can send his son, Kal-El, to Earth. When Kal-El grows up and becomes Superman, Jor-El's nephew Ty-Zor finds Superman and kills him. Upon learning of his son's death, Jor-El commits suicide and meets his son in heaven. Superman then rises from the dead and defeats Ty-Zor. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor helps the government look for Kryptonian technology, only to reveal in a shocking plot twist that he himself is from Krypton. There is quite a bit of concept art that exists online for this film. Though no actor was officially cast in the film, Henry Cavill was the frontrunner to play Superman, and test footage of him in the costume exists online. Also, Robert Downey Jr. was the frontrunner to play Lex Luthor. Eventually, however, WB requested McG move production to Australia, as it was extremely cheap to film there. Unhappy with this request, he dropped out as director. Since WB needed to repair both Superman and Batman's film records, the decision was made to make a Batman vs. Superman movie in 2003, which was hinted at in an Easter egg in I Am Legend. In the script, Clark and Lois have been divorced for a while, and Bruce Wayne has quit being Batman. Jim Gordon, Dick Grayson, and Alfred Pennyworth are all dead, and Bruce is planning to get married. However, his bride is killed by the Joker, who was believed to be dead for years. Batman seeks revenge, but is stopped by Superman, who fears Batman will try and kill the Joker. This leads to a huge brawl between the two, and a revelation from behind the scenes that Lex Luthor has been pulling the strings and in prison by creating Joker clones. Jude Law was the front runner to play Superman, and Johnny Depp was eyed to star as Batman, but the film was cancelled as DC decided to stick with solo films at the moment. In 2005, director Christopher Nolan successfully brought the Caped Crusader back to the big screen in Batman Begins. Now it was Superman's turn. All WB needed was a good director. Bryan Singer dreamed of directing a Superman movie for years. With Singer now out of the X-Men franchise temporarily, WB saw a huge opportunity to tap him for their newest project, Superman Returns. With Superman Returns now in the works, Singer was given enough creative space to do whatever he pleased with the character. His film was going to be a loose sequel to the first 4 films with a new cast. Brandon Routh was chosen to play the titular character, replacing Christopher Reeve, who had died recently at the time. Kevin Spacey was chosen to take Gene Hackman's place as Lex Luthor. The script was written to be more character-driven and less action-driven. Funny enough, it seems Singer recycled bits and pieces of the unused Superman Reborn script, as Lois and Clark have a child together in the film. A sequel, which was to be titled The Man of Steel, was already being penned. In it, Brainiac, a robot from Krypton who comes to Earth, tries to save humanity, but as it turns out, he is secretly trying to destroy humanity. He mind controls Superman's son to grow into an adult and fight his father. Superman has no choice but to kill his son. According to Singer, this was supposed to be a Bible metaphor. In other words, Superman killing his son for the fate of mankind is similar to God sacrificing Jesus for mankind. All Singer needed was for Superman Returns to be a success. Unfortunately, the film received mixed reviews and underperformed at the box office. Many critics complained the movie was too emotional to a point where it felt too much like a soap opera. Singer later admitted in an interview that when he saw X-Men The Last Stand in theaters, he knew leaving the X-Men franchise was a big mistake. He returned to Fox to produce X-Men Origins Wolverine and X-Men First Class. He later went on to direct X-Men Days of Future Past and X-Men Apocalypse for the studio as well. This meant that Superman would have to be left on the shelf for another 7 years. In 2008, WB released a sequel to Batman Begins titled The Dark Knight. At the time, it was the most successful superhero movie, and Batman instantly became the golden goose of comic book films. But WB still wanted a Justice League movie, and Christopher Nolan's Batman series was just way too grounded to spin off into anything else. DC hired Mad Max director George Miller to direct the DC crossover film. Unlike with Marvel, however, WB planned a movie that took place in a newly established universe. The movie, titled Justice League Mortal, would have had DJ Cotrona as Superman. A video game to go along with the movie was also in the works. The movie was eventually cancelled, with WB fearing that audiences would be confused at the fact that there were 2 different Batmen. In 2011, WB hoped their Green Lantern movie could launch a new DC cinematic universe. The film tanked, leaving WB desperate for another superhero hit. The good news was that Christopher Nolan's 3rd Batman film, titled The Dark Knight Rises, would be coming out in a year's time. The bad news is that Nolan vowed this would be his last Batman film. Warner Brothers needed a backup strategy fast. While on the set of The Dark Knight Rises, WB executives discussed the possibility of a new Superman film. Eventually, the movie was greenlit and set to come out in 2013, a year after The Dark Knight Rises. WB recycled the name for Bryan Singer's canceled sequel and titled the film Man of Steel. Watchmen and 300 director Zack Snyder was hired to direct. Henry Cavill, who was the front-runner to play Superman in the now-cancelled Superman Flyby, finally got his chance to play the part. Unlike Superman Returns, Man of Steel was going to be a full-on reboot that would retell the origin story. The plot explains that children on Krypton are designed to be a certain person. Despite this, Jor-El and his wife conceived naturally. With Krypton falling, Zod protests the Kryptonian Congress and is sentenced to the Phantom Zone. Some of the lines here are ripped straight from Superman Flyby. After Kal-El is sent to Earth, Krypton is blown up. When Clark grows up, he learns of his past. When Zod returns from the Phantom Zone, He wants to destroy humanity in order to use Earth to resurrect Krypton. In order to stop him, Kal-El has no choice but to kill Zod. The controversial scene where Zod dies is very similar to the script for the Superman Returns sequel, where Superman's son is killed. On the day Man of Steel came out, WB announced Man of Steel 2. Unfortunately, Man of Steel received mixed reviews from critics. The film made $600 million at the box office, making it the highest-grossing solo Superman film ever. Despite this, the movie was expected to make much more money. A month after announcing Man of Steel 2, WB's plans mysteriously changed as a new Batman v Superman film was announced at San Diego Comic-Con. It would later be revealed that the movie's new title was Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. This is where we are going to be talking spoilers for the recent film Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. If you have not seen it yet but intend on doing so, I suggest you leave the video now. Anyways, the film was originally set to come out July 17th, 2015, but was pushed back to March 25th, 2016. WB controversially announced that Ben Affleck would play Batman, Gal Gadot would play Wonder Woman, making her debut big screen appearance, and Jesse Eisenberg would be the new Lex Luthor. As filming went on, fans continued to wonder when Man of Steel 2 would happen. Zack Snyder said in an interview that Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice is a Superman film that essentially counts as Man of Steel 2, but Henry Cavill insisted this was not the case. WB hoped the movie would make over $1 billion. The film centers very much around Batman. We see a flashback to his origin, followed by a flashback to the destruction in Man of Steel. After the employees of Wayne Industries die, Bruce decides to get revenge on Superman. Lex, who hates gods, stages many attempts to try and ruin Superman's reputation. He then kidnaps Clark's mother, while pitting him against Batman. After Superman and Batman become friends, Lex creates Doomsday, forcing Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman to team up. Superman is killed, leading Batman to begin forming the Justice League. At the end of the film, the dirt placed on Superman's grave levitates, hinting that he may not be dead. Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice received mixed reviews, and while it did make $900 million, it didn't break $1 billion. The film currently stands at a 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. DC has a huge schedule in place, but one question still remains. What about Man of Steel 2? Zack Snyder has recently hinted that it may happen, but WB is currently trying to kick him out. Russell Crowe, who played Jor-El in Man of Steel, revealed that a Christopher Nolan Batman-like trilogy for Superman was in the works before it was inevitably kicked to the curb for a Justice League setup. The next DC movie is Suicide Squad, coming this August. The pressure is on to use the film as a way of redeeming DC, but the future of Superman is still in the dark. Well, guys, that is my first episode of History of Superheroes on Film. My next episode is about Batman, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like below, leave a comment, and I'm out, guys. Bye.